And just like that,
Like
we're
what?
back.
We do be back.
What is the that we are being likened to that is back?
Well, just like that, the expression meaning that, as simply as that.
By this process.
That is a pronoun denoting a thing that you haven't identified.
Well, I feel like a lot of times
the
people...
thing is the process which we have just conducted.
which is...
the particular sequence of actions we have just carried out in order to initiate this chain of events.
So
Yeah.
a discard call and a clap.
A Discord call and a clap.
If Riley sounds like a computer, it's because he's finally become one. Or he's
Yes.
using his headset because of shipping issues.
Yes. Well, not so much shipping issues. The cord was kind of bad to begin with. But the power adapter from my Phantom Power box has broken. The cord just snapped
Oh,
as
lovely.
I pulled it out. So, yeah, apologies for the lesser audio quality this week, but
We'll make
such
do.
is life sometimes, and I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do about either fixing or replacing it. So,
Should be
hopefully
fun.
by next week I'll be back to my quality microphone self.
So, how was everybody's couple weeks? It's been... did you get a chance to listen to the last episode?
I have not, but I did see the cover picture, and I am greatly pleased.
There's a moment where I say, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do for the thumbnail. And the image of that had popped into my head right in that minute. So I managed to carry out my vision as planned.
You know, it's not an anime, but you know, we'll give it a pass.
I think we should
It's
just
made by
start
Japanese
sneaking it
people.
into more thumbnails in general. Just here.
I don't know. Somebody unfollowed like the day you did that.
Oh,
So
Why?
what, the day that episode went up? I don't know. Maybe we have a member of our audience that's a little sensitive to those sort of things.
Maybe.
You know, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
right.
We're gonna keep doing it because we find it enjoyable. So.
Or maybe they just you know what? I keep getting notifications, but I have stopped being one of the two people who listens, so I'm just dipping.
Let's go with that. Because I think it fits perfectly thematically because the moon is very threatening. I was talking to somebody who's like, holy crap, that's the moon from Majora's Mask. I was like, yep, that's what it looks like.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Precisely.
But
Isn't
anyway.
there a Moonfall movie happening?
Yeah, it's like a Roland Emmerich film that's coming out at some point or another. I saw a teaser for it online. And everyone in the Twitter thread was like, so Majora's Mask. It was all just Majora's Mask memes. So I was pleased with that, having just played the game myself.
You get the references.
I do, like the dung dung.
Like the Dawn of the First Day.
Yep, that had been used in quite a few YTPs I'd seen, as well as riffing on, people mixing that with the Law and Order SVU sound, because it's about the same timing. I think that was pretty funny. But yes, now I know the references, having played both Ocarina and Majora's Mask.
Mm-hmm.
But, how's everybody's week? Stuff happened.
Yeah, I moved into seminary, and I have a new large room that you can audibly see behind me.
Mm-hmm. It is audibly large.
It is audibly large, and my one complaint is that the showers are made for small people.
I can see the shower audibly in the shot. It does look small.
Yeah, that shower head is at 5 feet.
Oh boy!
So it's actually at head level.
You gotta do some
It's-
wall sits to
it's
get under it.
Yeah, I literally am squatting at a 45-degree angle to get under that thing.
Don't slip, otherwise you might just get wedged stuck in the shower.
Being 6'2" as I am and all, so yeah, that's my only complaint. And also, I have no control over the temperature in my room. So the AC runs on full blast all day, every day. So even I get cold in here, which is
Unusual.
impressive.
Because usually you have the AC cranked when you have the choice.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep my windows open in here during the day, just to keep the temperature reasonable.
You're going to be, I suppose, if the same holds true for the heat in the.
It's going to be miserable in the winter.
Oh boy.
Because the heat's going to be on all day, every day, and that one will be worse. You can always get under more blankets around when it's cold, but
there's only so many layers you can take off.
Correct.
Yep, and it only gets so cold outside in Indiana to try to equalize things.
Right. It gets down to about 30, which is, enough.
It's the freezing point of water.
It's enough to be wintry. It fits
It's enough.
Our arbitrarily set definition of what winter should feel like. Barely makes the threshold.
Not necessarily arbitrary. It's just our experience of it.
Yeah. But what we say is a valid experience of winter. But
I think you can fairly say that a valid experience of winter involves snow.
Yeah.
Which they don't generally have here.
Like Australia, for example, has, astronomical winter, but they don't have
meteorological winter.
Yep. So, fun facts. Something not wintry, but was still fun. John, our beloved listener / guest host, we had his bachelor party over the weekend, which was a grand adventure. I represented. Nathan had his commitment, and Riley was obviously back in seminary. But we rented a houseboat up on Birch Lake, Minnesota, up by Babbitt, Ely, north, south of the Boundary Waters a little ways, which was a big lake. So we sailed around and drank a lot and played a lot of games and ate a lot of junk food and sailed around and had adventures. It was a good time. A little cold. It was about 10 degrees colder than it's been in Fargo. So it was like, well, the first day was like 70s, which was pretty decent. And then the subsequent days were like in the 60s. So there wasn't a ton of water activity.
That does make sense for up there, though.
Mm-hmm. What was funny, though, is that the water temperature stayed the same, but the air temperature changed. So the first day, the water felt chilly, but the second day, the water felt warm, which is kind of an interesting exercise in perspective, yeah. But houseboats, I have to say, even though they're a little expensive, it's probably my new favorite way to be on the water. Not going to lie. It was pretty fun. We had like a 50-foot houseboat, and you could stand on the roof. There's like chairs and stuff up there for hanging out. Dan rigged it up with some the best man Dan. He rigged it up with some like string lights that we kept dropping and breaking and having to sweep off. But it looked cool when they weren't broken. And there was like a galley and everything and bathrooms, and it was pretty well laid out. So it was some longboarding. Overall, I really thoroughly enjoyed myself. It was a good crew of guys too. There were some late, deep conversations during the nights and stuff. So it was a good time. We stayed up till 3 a.m. the first night playing poker. And then after that, we're like, okay, that was a bad idea. Because I'm the youngest one there. I was the youngest one there, and I'm 24. So all these guys are like, ugh, let's not do that. So, but overall, it was very fun. And even though we were doing a bunch, I felt very relaxed the whole time. It was a great little mini vacation for Labor Day weekend. So, Nathan, you had your cousin's weekend. How was that?
I did. And we had that in St. Cloud, where my sister and her husband live. And also it's not far from where one of my other cousins lives. So in my cousin Sabrina's apartment, there's like a gathering space you can rent out. And so she rented that out for the 2 days, and it was really good. Like everybody showed up. We drank alcohol. We played games. We had junk food.
Everything minus the boat.
Pretty much. But no, it was a really good time just to catch up with siblings, Rachel and Jeremy were there. My sister and her husband, and then your brother-in-law brought his wife
And their our collective
niece.
in what's the word? In utero.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, cool stuff.
Also, shout outs to I learned Megan's still listening. So if you're
Hi,
listening,
Megan. Thanks
Hello.
for listening.
Thank you for liking the Majora's Mask episode.
Yes, much appreciate. I promise the audio quality is better most of the time.
Most of the time.
70% of the time at
She's
least.
listened to other episodes too, so
Yeah, good. Glad to
no,
have
it was
you.
good. It was just good. And then driving there and back with my younger siblings in the car, just hanging out, listening to music and talking, and it was cool stuff.
Yeah,
Just good time to spend with family, and was also a relaxing weekend despite all the stuff we did. Originally it was going to be like themed, but because of work things that kept Elena from my oldest sister from doing stuff, she trimmed back on the theming and just made it a games weekend. So we had this huge tournament bracket where each pair of contestants would choose their own game to face each other in. So first bracket was me and my brother-in-law Lucas. We played War, and I beat him in 2 runs of the deck. He didn't care to win or lose.
I mean,
so
it's
whatever.
basically it may as well be a dice game for
At that
Yeah.
point, yeah.
War is entirely RNG.
Absolutely.
Unless you're my 6-year-old nephew, I guess he's 7 now. But unless you're my 7-year-old nephew who decides to look at the cards, it's like, come on, bud, that's not how you play. Anyway,
But then after that, I beat my sister. I beat my cousin Sabrina.
what? Hold
at
on, you did
Boggle.
what now? Sorry, keep talking.
I beat my cousin Sabrina at Boggle, and that was fun. I beat your sister at Ticket
What?
to Ride.
Hold on. Now.
It was our first. I'd only ever played Ticket to Ride one other time, so had she. So we had this kind of one.
Hello, John. Yes, Ticket to Ride, John.
Yes, Ticket to Ride.
But it was very fun, and she was a very graceful loser. But then it was me in the final round against my younger sister Joan, and she trounced me in a fighting game. I brought my Switch and hooked it up. She's like, "Can we play the My Hero Academia fighting game you got?" And like, okay, but she trounced me as Todoroki
Oh, okay.
because he's kind of OP. But it was fun. We agreed. We shook hands at the end. It was good. I don't hate her. I'm not bitter.
It wasn't Smash.
No, it wasn't. That's why
That wouldn't have been fair.
it would not have been an even playing field.
Yeah.
It
So,
was overall good time.
how was life back at seminary round 2?
Seminary round 2 has been much more settled and I'm just like, yep, back to business as usual. I know people here now and am established as a person, so it's just like, yeah, good to get back at it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any
We had our intensive spiritual formation week the first week, which is not really all that intense. It's just
intentional?
more of an intentional than an intense. But we had a theology of priesthood, a spirituality of priesthood little course, which was really good. And then we had a course on prayer, just in general, which was also good. So, and then this semester I'm taking a full slate of philosophy courses, which I haven't done yet. I have epistemology, modern philosophy, natural theology, and ethics and natural law.
Sounds like a pretty relevant set of coursework there.
That it be.
I mean, if it wasn't relevant, I would question the validity of that seminary.
Well, true.
There's a pretty particular program that is set out in the BPF for what they're supposed to teach us. So
Oh, that's good.
it's pretty much the same stuff everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well, speaking of pretty much the same stuff, we're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
That I'm Riley.
What are we talking
And,
about today?
We're doing an edition of novel ideas this week.
Oh, a novel idea. You don't get to hear that bumper super often, do you?
Yeah, but we actually have been doing it pretty often lately. Like,
Yeah, true.
just about every time it's been my turn for the last 3 episodes, it's been a book.
Because
so.
I need to read books.
I mean, I was unpacking the books in I moved rooms, so now I'm unpacking the books because I have a bookshelf that our roommate left when he left and isn't our roommate anymore. And I'm like,
Bye.
I should reread and then make James read Ender's Game.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's a good one.
I watched like the middle of the movie, and from what I understand,
Disregard the movie.
yeah.
It's
Anyway,
merely okay.
Disregard the
But this is
the
what
squirrel.
we're talking about.
This is not what we're talking about.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about the first act of the Wheel of Time.
Oh, okay.
The Wheel of Time is a 14-book and a prequel series.
Aren't they
So
making a movie?
They're making a TV series,
Okay,
which is the only logical way to do it.
gotcha.
When you've got 14 books of somewhat variable length,
Yeah.
you kind of need a TV series to really flesh that out.
See, series of unfortunate events.
Sort of, but yeah, my main intention with this was to kind of introduce the source material so that the show might be appealing to people, or if
Sure.
they can see whether it is or not. You don't take the trailer as the gospel rendition of how they're approaching this.
Oh?
They did some interesting choices with the trailer. They chose to focus on some characters that are very much side characters, but still important, and make them seem like they're the main characters. Like, the actual main character of the series has like 3 seconds of screen time in the entire 2.5-minute trailer.
Huh. Is it like a ticking boxes kind of a thing, or it's like we need to showcase this group?
It's kind of that, really.
Okay.
They're just like, they're showing all the stuff, and the side characters are kind of the flashy stuff that people are generally interested in. That's where all the magic is. That's where all the flashy and exciting visual stuff is. I understand their decisions. People are getting mad because they're like thinking they're gonna do girl power stuff, and you know,
And who knows?
which is we'll dive into some of those themes.
Yeah, long story
that-
short, I think people place way too much emphasis, both the audience and the studios place way too much emphasis on trailers. Which, I mean, I get that, you're marketing and you need to get butts in seats or fingers on buttons to buy subscriptions for whatever online service you're selling. I get that, but I feel like it's sort of messed up. It's like those people who like try to guess what a gift is before they open it. Just like, you're missing the point. Just open the dang gift and enjoy it. So that's kind of what I have to think about trailers.
But we're not talking about the trailers.
We're talking about the
book.
source material.
Introduce the book, Riley. Let's get the
We're
show on the road.
We're doing the first 3 books today,
Okay.
which forms kind of the first act, in my opinion. So, the first book, The Eye of the World, starts in a farm near the small village of Emmonsfield. Classic hero's journey starting in a backwater in the middle of nowhere from which the hero will emerge. So we're introduced to our main character, Rand Althor, and his father, Tam. And they go into town and meet Rand's best friends, Matrim Cawthon and Perrin Ibarra. And, times are a little hard here in the Shire Not Shire. I mean,
all of those, the virtue of selfishness and economic theories are just kind of, they're not working as great as Rand thought.
That's good.
So how long does the dad live?
The dad lives a long time. He does not die.
Oh, okay.
Well, this isn't a Pixar movie.
It is a fantasy novel, though.
Yeah.
True.
So
He was not. His mother, however, is not.
Ah.
We do not. She could be dead. She's missing. We know that much.
Is there a
She's not
barracuda?
around.
So deadbeat mom, I like it. Switching it up.
Deadbeat
Got
mom.
it going
Switching.
on.
I,
Squirrel. Sorry. I can't
anyway,
help it.
that's what we're here for, to make stupid jokes like that. That's half the appeal of this show. So,
Hopefully.
yes, unlike the Shire, things are not prosperous and idyllic. These are like, good. They're hardworking people. They make a life for themselves. Things aren't as easy as they've ever been, but they keep on going. They make the best of it. They work together as a community to.
So it's more akin to, say, like the village from Aragon, like.
Yeah, I would
More
say
that
the
sort of
village from Aragon is more akin to it because the Wheel of Time was made in the 90s, in 1990.
Gotcha.
So, yes. But there's some fun things coming up soon. There's a gleeman who's kind of like a traveling bard in this world, coming to town for Beltane, the spring festival. So that's pretty neat, because that's not something that happens very often in Emmons Field, being out in the middle of nowhere as it is. And there is a strange lady comes into town with her bodyguard, and they're like, "Hey, how's it going, people? We're here. We're here for reasons. We're here for stuff, Don't assume anything bad. We're here. We're just here." And sure enough, not long after, some bad things happen. The village is attacked by Trollocs, which are these like demonic chimera things, just conglomerated animals.
Ooh.
So yeah, they're scary bad guys. And a Myrdral, which is this faceless humanoid thing that commands the Trollocs. And Moiraine reveals herself to be an Aes Sedai, who is a wizard lady. And then she fights them off with the magical magics.
Ooh.
So Moiraine is all like, "Hey, you three kids, you are all Ta'veren," which means that you're like this. You're a person around which the Wheel of Time spins its threads. So in short, your decisions influence the way things pan out in the world. Normally the wheel sort of governs the way people act in a vaguely primarily caused way, rather. But that is not true of Ta'veren. Their choices sort of influence the way things go. It's a reversal of the norm. So all three of Rand, Matt, and Perrin are Ta'veren, she says, which is extremely unusual for, pretty much unheard of in the history of ever, which is a long time in the recorded history of unending history, because this is a more or less eternal world, which is the prologue will explain that part a little more detail. I won't go into it too much now. But so they have to leave town, because if they stay around, then, more bad guys are going to show up and burn down their village and kill everyone they love, which is something they'd like to avoid. So they and their friend Egwene, who has the talent to become an Aes Sedai. So if she doesn't learn how to control her power, she'll end up, just hurting herself by virtue of the fact that she can't control it. So she has to go to Tar Valon, the city where the Aes Sedai live, to train. And so the crew sets out. Rand, Matt, Perrin, Moiraine, Lon, her bodyguard, Egwene, and the Gleeman, who is kind of the rogue of the party. He's a rogue bard combo. That's what he does. And they make their way through various cities, evading evil creatures, and they pass through an ancient abandoned city where Matt picks up this dagger with a shiny red ruby in the middle. He's like,
shiny.
Money. And unbeknownst to him, this dagger has been cursed. So
One does not simply pick up a bejeweled item in a fantasy world without consequences.
Right. And so, because he's got that, the big ol' evil that even the antagonist characters won't enter the city to chase after them for, gets mad and starts coming after the party. So they have to run and escape, and they get split up. So Rand and Matt get on a boat, and they sail on a boat for a while. Egwin and Perrin get spat out by the river, and they meet this guy named Elias, who is real chummy with wolves. You know, he's got these kind of yellow, wolfy eyes about him.
Kevin Costner?
Yeah, something like that. And so the Perrin and Egwin run afoul of some Children of the Light, which are these kind of fundamentalist militia that go around and do stuff for the light, audible quotation marks. When it's really kind of just whatever they feel like doing. It's not like, they think they're doing the right thing, but it really ends up being kind of arbitrary.
Rationalization.
So that's happening, and Elias gets caught up in the fight and dies, ? After which Perrin starts to be able to hear wolves in his mind, and his eyes start to turn yellow, much like Elias is dead. So he becomes the new Wolfie Man. Meanwhile, Rand and Matt are on their way to Camelin, which is the city where they're all supposed to meet up. And Matt is starting to grow weaker and more irritable and cold and distant. They don't know that this thing is cursed. So they're just kind of... Rand is watching Matt dissipate and start to become a shadow of his former self, and it's really bothering him. But eventually they all get back together in Camelin, and they're like, oh yeah, Moiraine's like, yeah, this thing is cursed, so we're going to heal you, but you're going to be stuck with this forever. It is a wound that will never heal. Unless we can get you back to Tarvalin and get a whole bunch of Aes Sedai to do a thing and purge you of the curse. Which will be very difficult, and you won't like it. So, once they get there, they're like, hey, there's this thing called the Eye of the World, after the title of the book. And it's this pool of Saidin, which has not yet been touched by the Dark One's power. So, quick kickback to the prologue. There's two halves of the one power that is the source of power that people in the magic system use. There's the female half, which is Saidar, and the male half, Saidin. And in the prologue, we see the events where Saidin, the male half, is tainted by the influence of the Dark One. So whenever men use Saidin, they eventually go mad because of that, the effect of the Dark One. So that's why there are only female Aes Sedai. There used to be male and female, but now it's just female because if you're a dude and you use the power, you go mad. So they come to know that there is still some that has not been tainted by the Dark One. So they're like, yes, let's go there. And the seal that holds the Dark One in prison is crumbling, dissipating. So they would like to ideally fix that before he breaks out and ends the world and such. So they go there and they meet the Green Man and they find some cool stuff, including the Horn of Valir, which summons the ancient dead heroes of old. Sound familiar?
Ooh.
And they fight against some of the Forsaken, which are the 13 agents of the Dark One, a couple of whom apparently have escaped from their prison. They were all imprisoned with the Dark One at the same time.
But they were small enough to squeeze out.
They got squeezed out because one of the seals has fallen off the prison somehow, and they find one in the Eye of the World. So they're like, some of these seals have been removed. I wonder how that happened. But anyway, they get in a fight with the Forsaken. Rand uses the eye to beat them up, which leads Moiraine to confirm her suspicion that Rand is actually the dragon reborn. And, part of this cyclical nature of the world is that there is always a dragon, someone who is the reincarnation of the hero that will destroy the Dark One.
Fus Roda.
That's the dragon born, not the dragon reborn.
Okay.
There's a pretty significant difference. The Dragonborn is just a dude who can use dragon powers.
Oh, okay.
That's Skyrim.
So more like a Link, but dragon.
More like a Link. He doesn't
More like
actually
a Link.
have any particular dragon-esque powers.
It's just there's a dark one vaguely rising, and he's the one who's supposed to rise up against it.
Yeah, because fire and stuff. Fire and stuff. So,
Opposing forces.
yes. So, at Book 2, picks up right where we left off, and the Amerlin seat, who is the leader of the Aes Sedai, shows up and says, "Hey, you three, I'm gonna meet with you." And they're like, "Okay, you're scary, I don't want to do that." Rand learns how to sword fight. The horn that they all found gets stolen, and they spend most of the book chasing after it. Egwene gets kidnapped by the Shan-Chan, a race of people who come from across the ocean.
He's the guy with the 7 rings, right?
Yes, that's
Or
the
the 10
guy.
rings.
That's the
Yeah.
not the 9 rings.
Not the 9 rings, the 10 rings.
Yes,
Gotcha.
correct. So they're a race of people that claim to be the descendants of Arthur Hawkwing, who's kind of the King Arthur of this universe, who once ruled over the continent justly and all that jazz. But they're kind of mean people. They aren't so nice. They kidnap Aes Sedai and slap this magical collar on them that lets them force the Aes Sedai to do whatever they want. So they kidnap Egwene, and she becomes one of their slaves for a while. The gang gets caught in a sandwich between the Shan-Chan and the White Cloaks, the Children of the Light. And Matt's like, I think we need all these dead heroes of old to come and help us out. So he blows the horn, and they show up, and Rand uses his magical powers and beats up everybody. So that's Book 2. Book 3, we start up pretty much immediately after that. And by this point, pretty much everyone knows that Rand is most likely the dragon. So they're like, "Oh, it's the dragon. We're gonna come out of the woodwork to support you, Mr. Guy." And he's like, "Ooh, I don't like this. I don't mean no like attention.
The weight of responsibility. I am a quiet man.
Me just farm boy. Me no like people. Me run away.
I want to go hoe the crops and water spinach."
And
It's not much, but it's honest work.
and tend to the sheep, because that's what I did.
Oh, yeah, that too.
And so he's like, "I'm gonna ditch everybody." So he ditches everybody.
I am not
And-
the Messiah.
Except he's sort of vaguely accepting that he's probably the Messiah. And so he goes to Tyr, which is this city in the south where there's this unbreakable fortress called the Stone of Tyr.
That's what
And-
they'd like to think.
They'd like to think, but the prophecy is that only the dragon reborn can grab this sword that's inside it.
Ooh, is it stuck in a stone?
It's not stuck. It's sort of floating adjacent to a stone.
Okay.
So
But it's the magical sword that unlocks his true
it's
potential.
the magical sword that proves that he's the one, the dragon.
That seals the darkness, as it were.
Yes, as it were. So the sword is called Kalendor, and he's on his way down there to
It
go
sets
grab
the
it.
Mm-hmm.
timeline correctly.
Yeah, it can get him a lot of dates.
Yeah.
It sure does, which we will see in later books. But they follow his trail by seeing all of these odd mishaps happening in the world because he's a Taver and he's causing everywhere he go to have strange things happen, so they can follow his trail like that. But of course, he is the dragon, so he is on magical roids and is keeping ahead of them by virtue of his strong powers. And Matt gets dragged to Tarvalin so he can be healed properly by a whole bunch of Aes Sedai, even though he doesn't like them. Pretty much everyone in the world doesn't like them, because they don't trust them very much, because they have powers that they don't, and there's nothing they can do about it. Even though one of the 3 pledges the Aes Sedai take are to never use the power against humans. So they physiologically cannot use the power against another person in any way.
People fear that which they do not understand.
Pretty much. But he gets healed anyway, and he's recovering. But he decides to sneak out and go on his own way, and to catch him, of course, and say, hey, you weigh like 2 pounds. You're going to need to stay around here and, recover your strength. So he likes gambling, so he goes and does some dicing in the city, and apparently he's like insanely good at dice, which is not something you can be good at because it's purely random. So he just wins oodles of money just playing dice.
I suppose he's one of these people that affects the wheel of time, right? So I suppose that's just, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of his luck, quote unquote, is really, the events forming around him. But yeah, his shtick is being good at gambling. That's his personality. So Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine, I don't know if I've talked about Elaine and Nynaeve yet, but there are other side characters who are important. But they're all doing Aes Sedai stuff. They're learning how to do the magical powers, and they're all prodigiously powerful. Once in a generation, but 3 at once. Eerily similar to the group of dudes that we've got on the other side. There's no 1-to-1 correspondence.
Okay.
There's more like a 4-to-1 correspondence, and the other 2 are left out to dry. But that's later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Magical swords, man.
Magical swords. Magical swords. So the 3 of them are tasked with hunting the Black Aja, which is a group of Aes Sedai who have turned to the shadow. There's 7 different Ajas, which reflect the perspective that the people have on what the purpose of the power and what being an Aes Sedai means. Sort of akin to religious orders that have different charisms.
Sure.
And the Amerlin sits above them, who is all and none at the same time. So, they're hunting down the Black Aja, who have turned against the light and gone to the shadow. So everyone ends up in Tyr at the end. Rand fights more bad guys and beats up some more Forsaken, grabs the sword, proves he's the dragon. Hooray, we did it. We finished the first act. So,
Huzzah.
Thoughts and impressions, observations.
Lots of, nothing new from a fantasy archetype standpoint,
on a
but
surface
the way
level
that
explanation.
but the way things are put together is unique.
Yeah, it has a weird position in that it's one of those fantasy works that influenced almost every modern fantasy work, much like Tolkien did. But it's one that not as many people have read. So
yeah, so there's familiar notes here and there. But
when you read it, you see all of these things that came after it, the ways that they were influenced by the Wheel of Time and how it chose to depart from the archetype that Tolkien set forth in The Lord of the Rings.
But yeah, it seems interesting. Magic system seems kind of intriguing, and a whole cast of characters. Yeah. That
only balloons as you go.
Well, 14 books. They got to keep it fresh somehow.
Yeah. There's a great number of side characters in all of these books who show up at various times, and you can learn about them when you read them.
Yeah,
if you read them.
There's nothing like particularly interesting that stands out about some side characters thematically or
They
arc-wise?
they exist to sort of express alternative viewpoints
Sure.
that the main characters have to grapple with and probably eventually refute because they're deficient in some way.
Which is an interesting device for doing that.
And it's similar to how you experience people in life. You come across people that have differing viewpoints, and you'll
You have to sort
learn
that
from
out.
them and discuss from them, and some of them you may never ever see again.
Yeah.
So it's like your life's story has side characters that whose purpose is to help form you by encountering them.
And there's sort of that Aquinas factor of like there's always a nugget of truth somewhere in every perspective, and it's just a matter of finding where that is and where it isn't. I mean, pretty heavily paraphrased there, but yeah,
Yeah.
the concept remains. So as somebody who's read the books, what do you enjoy about it, Riley?
I really enjoy the just like more classic hero's journey fantasy story. It's not full of subversion. There is subversion in there because it is trying to be distinct from Lord of the Rings while also maintaining a lot of the things that are appealing about it. I mean, if you've looked at any interview that Robert Jordan's ever done, he will openly admit just how influenced by Lord of the Rings he was and how much of its style he incorporated into what he wrote.
But it doesn't seem like there's, at least in the early part of the series, any like central big bad that they're up against.
The central big bad is the Dark One, who is not really present. Much like Sauron, he's sort of this existential threat in the background that you don't encounter face to face.
But is the source of all evil in the world that they
Correct.
encounter.
And his agents, in this case the Forsaken, are kind of the ones that Rand ends up fighting over the course of the book.
So it's I was just going to say, he acts as a kind of similar to Sauron devil analog in the analogy.
Yeah.
In the way that he influences the world, not directly, but directly,
By his influence over the minds and hearts of others.
Of men in particular, it seems.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. There are very few non-human races around in the Wheel of Time. There's one prominent one that we encounter, the Ogier, who are like big, giant, sort of, I don't know, almost Wookiee-esque things.
Sure.
But they can talk and are civilized and stuff. So
interesting.
Well, not that the Wookiees aren't civilized, but they speak the English and live forever. Not forever, but a really long time.
It's like Sasquatch, but if he could talk, which he certainly can.
But the rest of the characters are all human, even the ones that that transform into chimera things.
Well, the Trollocs are like, beings created by the Dark One.
Oh, okay.
So like all of the non-evil things are human.
Sure.
And all of the evil things are non-human. Emphasizing the value of human life.
Yeah.
But
now there are people who are evil, but they're, influenced by evil power more or less.
Yeah. So, some of the interesting ideas contained in the wheel. One of the prominent ideas is like the Wheel of Time itself as a vaguely it establishes a universe that is eternal, which is but it's but also there is a creator. There's a creator that they make reference to pretty often, but it really emphasizes this cyclic nature of reality. Ages come and go, but they repeat at the same time. So it's like integrating this sort of Eastern idea that time is cyclical, time repeats, and
That and the diametrically opposed dark and light and so forth. Yeah,
yes,
The male and female
the
power.
ontological dualism that is present in that evil has its own nature, which is something that the Christian tradition does not accept as such. But it's something that the Eastern philosophical traditions do think about. And we'll get into that someday in the philosophy cast, but
Yep. Someday.
the basic idea is that evil is non-being. Evil as such is non-existence. And so insofar as you are evil, you are reducing your being, you are sort of working your way to the edge of nothingness.
It's like a whole, right? It's not that there's a thing that is evil. It's actively evil. It's just a lack of good.
Right.
So when that guy picks up the cursed dagger, he's
And it
becoming
starts
hollowed
sucking
out.
the good.
Well, that's
it's-
not the perspective that the Wheel of Time brings. It has this ontological dualism where evil has a nature and good has a nature, and they are in conflict with each other.
Gotcha. Yeah, evil is a privation of the good.
In the Christian tradition,
Yep.
where it's not here. It has its own being in essence.
Interesting.
Yeah. Another of the interesting ideas it has, the world is largely matriarchal. So, the Aes Sedai are like the most powerful people out there, and they are an all-female organization. And one of the most prominent kingdoms in the world is, matriarchal. Andor, where Elaine is from. Elaine is one of the is the daughter heir of Andor. So, and she's one of the Aes Sedai in training as of book 3. So, it's like, it's trying to comment on what the world would be like if instead of a patriarchal society, which we have had in the West up until probably the last 10 years, a very dominantly patriarchal society. It's like, what would the world be like if it weren't that way? And we haven't really fleshed that idea out within the first 3 books, but what Jordan is trying to make the point is that things wouldn't be all that different in all likelihood. A lot of the same problems that we have would still exist, just in reverse.
I mean, yeah, humans will be humans. The humans in power want to keep the humans not in power because they like power.
Right.
It's doesn't matter what boxes they tick. The person at the top wants to stay at top.
When you deny complementarity, things start hitting the fan.
Yes.
And it looks like from your description, it sounds like the cause of this lack of complementariness is the tainting of the male side of the magic system.
Yes.
Which was like, well, men can't be powerful now. Women have to be the powerful people. Sit down. Is what I'm reading into it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that to me it seems like a device to explore the idea more than his asserting that it ought to be that way.
Right, no, it's the explanation for why we're this way.
Right. And we're working our way towards the last battle, sort of the end of the reign of the Dark One. That's what we're moving towards.
Ending the Age of Dark and kindling the fire? Is that what we're doing?
Maybe. I haven't gotten there. I don't know what the nature
Is
of
there
that
a large-
event is going to be.
Large forest and tree spirits.
Yeah, it does seem quite akin to like the C.S.
owls.
Lewis, last battle thing.
Sure.
So-
Everybody dies.
It very well could be that, but I don't know.
No spoilers
I
for
haven't gotten that far yet. So
Oh.
there are 14, and I've only read 3.2 2. So I'm working my way
Okay.
through the 4th one at present.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
Well,
Neat. Well, more on the as the story develops.
more as the story develops. The magic system is pretty neat. It's pretty much a soft magic system. There's not a lot of explanation or detail about the power so far. As I understand, they do more of that in some of the later books. But some of the features are there's like, some of the classic elements. There's fire, earth, water, air, and something else, spirit, I think. And the male half is has a greater affinity to fire and earth, and the female have a greater affinity to water, air, and spirit. But they can all do all of it. It's just
Right.
the degree to which they excel at it varies.
Interesting.
And another interesting feature of it is that the power is like sort of for both halves is inherently addicting. Like, when you use it, you have to like connect to it in a certain way. For females, that's like an open receptivity. You allow it to come to you, and the male half is like, you reach out and touch it, which sort of reflects kind of the classic Catholic understanding of male and female and how the ontological postures work. Females are
Yep.
receptive, males are initiative. So kind of reflecting that idea.
that's kind of neat.
But it is kind of interesting how he makes that power like something that nobody wants to release, nobody wants to detach from, sort of like emphasizing the idea that power corrupts, and if you overuse it, it can cease to be a force for good and start to be something self-serving.
No matter
Sure.
which side you're tapping into. That's pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So I suppose with all that, we can get into the transcendental analysis.
Of the first third, or
Yeah.
That's the
the
first
like quarter.
3 out of
3
14.
out of 14. What's that?
Yeah.
It's like
It's almost a fifth.
3/14.
And honestly, it's probably less than-
21%, I think.
Yeah.
And given how probably the books get thicker as you go,
They do.
not even.
No,
So
that's
stay
amazing.
stay tuned, I guess, if we
We,
get
we
that.
may have several more of these.
So part 1 question mark. TM.
Truth.
Um
So, yeah, true things that we can talk about. Matriarchal societies end up having different, but nonetheless the same problems that patriarchal societies do. Changing just that isn't enough to make every problem go away. It's not
you
that.
can't do a single factor analysis on societal structure.
Yep.
We're dealing with human beings. Humans are fallen creatures. We're all gonna be dumb, particularly when we put in power.
Fundamentalism bad.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have a reductionist view of the way that the highest truths work. There is nuance to life that the Aes Sedai see that the children of the light don't.
I suppose we could explain the different perspectives on time work between like the more Eastern sensibilities that this series seems to have, where history is cyclical, whereas in the Christian worldview, time is very much linear, moving to a final point. Correct?
Yes.
The interesting thing that kind of struck me is like everybody else is predestined in their actions, except for the three main characters. So it's like,
The elect,
It's
as
not
it were.
precisely clear that that's the case.
oh,
The way I understand it is that it's the primary secondary causality distinction, where the wheel is the primary cause and human action and whatever else is secondary cause. which we will talk about in a philosophy cast someday.
Ooh,
Someday.
But those two things are distinct. So
Sure.
just because God rules the universe and controls everything that happens doesn't mean that we don't have free will. You could see that just intuitively.
Interesting. So how does that play into like these people who have more influence than others?
So they are, in a certain sense, given primary causality, given the power to make real,
Within
uh,
specific circumstances
yeah.
to the people around them.
It's not even that they have precise whatever they do, the wheel forms around them, but it's like they are sort of nexuses of things, of important events.
Sure.
So
They are destined for great things, as it were.
yeah,
Destiny children kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
good.
Any other? Yeah, goodness. What is good in the Wheel of Time? So far?
As I've mentioned earlier, it's like a good classic, good versus evil hero's journey. It's a lot of those. It has a bit of a darker bent than Lord of the Rings does, which is, significant.
Saying something, yeah, because
Because
there's some pretty.
There's moments of darkness, which because they're, Lord of the Rings is acknowledging the reality of evil, but it's like
pretty heavy.
but nonetheless it emphasizes that good will always triumph because evil is dumb.
Yeah, well, because like in Lord of the Rings, like hope is the undercurrent that drives everyone forward, whereas I feel like other works can get more stuck on the reality of evil,
Yeah,
minus the hope.
that is my one criticism of the wheel, is that it's like, because it has such a long narrative structure to it, I'm hoping that this is just a long haul plan, but like everyone in the main characters in the first 3 books are just like constantly looking at their own brokenness and inefficacy and being like, wow, I suck, life sucks. So like, yeah, I can see that starting to turn around as they're coming to accept who they are and their role in this fight against evil.
I am the magic dragon boy with the magic sword.
Yeah. It's
I think I can.
It's that classic progression of self-knowledge to self-acceptance to self-gift that we talk about in priestly formation,
which is a pretty fundamental, I guess, axiom of human
of being
development.
human, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It emphasizes that good will triumph in the end, as long as you maintain hope, which some of the characters struggle with, but they're working on it.
Like, case in point, you got Dagger Boy.
Dagger Boy, who through no fault of his own, really. I mean, he's being influenced by having picked up this cursed object.
He was a dagger boy, and he got staggered boy.
But like he didn't even know it was an evil thing to pick up that
It's
would
like,
ruin
ooh,
his
shiny.
life. It just was a thing that the longer he held on to it, the more it corrupted him from the inside out.
Which I suppose could be a metaphor for addiction in some ways. Where like you may not initially understand what it is you've gotten yourself into, but then it sort of...
Then you're in too deep, and now it's going to be a long, painful process where you're...
It distances you from people who care about you and things like that, and starts to warp your personality.
So don't do daggers, kids.
Yeah.
Stay in school. Don't do daggers.
Beauty. What is beautiful about the Wheel of Time series so far?
One of the things that stands out is like the vocabulary is very Germanic, which is something that you don't see a lot anymore.
No.
And it's like, kind of interesting how, I mean, he'll occasionally use Latin words, but
It
like,
seems like fictional languages seem to have more of an Eastern/Middle Eastern bent to the linguistic structure. Unless you're Tolkien and everything's just like Old
you
English
literally
and,
made up your own language, roughly based on Old English.
and Finnish, apparently.
But yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of linguistic consistency to it. I mean, Robert Jordan's not a linguist, so
Right.
Yeah.
But,
Makes sense. We
but
can't
like
expect everyone to
just
be
the
Tolkien.
vocabulary that he uses when he's writing is highly Germanic. He tends to use those shorter, Germanic words in his writing, which I find really interesting and kind of refreshing because, most smart people, quote unquote, audible air quotes, tend to use the more Latin vocabulary. I know I certainly do, but like, just
Check the name of the podcast.
check the name of the podcast.
Yeah, that's Greek. To be fair,
No, it's not actually.
Isn't it?
Palladian
crap.
is both. I mean, Latin stole it, but
Oh, okay.
there are a lot of words that Latin stole. They're just like English, really, except they have a consistent diction system. Anyway, where was I going with that?
Germanic
It's
words
approachable.
being easier to understand. Yeah.
It's approachable, which is neat, while having a certain charm to it that isn't, pretending to be overly sophisticated.
Which can be a pitfall with fantasy at times.
Because they all want to be Lord of the Rings, and so they all ride high and mighty trying to be high fantasy, but like not quite getting it.
Whereas what Lord of the Rings did was more like an eagle riding on the hot air and soaring above, and all these people are
And
trying.
the Gandalf riding on the eagle.
Yeah, but like all these people are like trying to be all. I'm just gonna keep this visual going here. They're trying to bat their wings and look all cool and stuff, while the eagle's just chilling. So, if that makes any sense, email us at play. Have we talked about beauty yet?
Yes,
We're in
we
the
are
middle of
presently talking about beauty.
Okay, good.
So anyway,
The-
good
the
Germanic
descri- the-
word choice that's approachable.
Germanic word choice, and the magic is cool, obviously. That's one of the highlights, is like the way the magic and the powers are described. It's like Sidar has this kind of light blue glow to it, and Sidin is like orange, but also weaved in like, oily black. So it's like when Rand is using Sidin and when the ladies are using Sidar, it's like a really intricate description of how that looks to them, which is cool. I like that a lot.
Primary color use.
Also, complementary colors,
Yeah.
orange and blue.
Yep. Cool. Audible/written color use. Unity. What seems to be drawing everything together?
The battle
The
of
wheel?
light and dark. And also the wheel of time. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, as they say. I like to call it the wheel winds as the wheel wills. Because everybody in the books love to whine about things.
Oh, this sucks. I suck. I'm so dumb. I'm not good enough.
And also,
I'm from Jersey for some reason.
I'm from New York. And they all just like, there are some characters who are more guilty of it than others, but like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, stop whining.
My cabbages.
Nynaeve.
But not.
Nynaeve and Celine have like an entire book where their arc is just whining to each other.
That's what they did.
Anyway,
I
Hopefully,
wonder
they'll
how
get
salty the author was. I might be able to relate to this on a personal level. Speaking of relating on a personal level, thanks for listening to the Palladian Papers, if that's all we had to say.
it is.
Okay. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Papist. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or suggestions for future episodes, email us at palladianpapist@gmail.com. And
That was a very pronounced complaints.
yes,
You get people complaining to your face recently about our podcast.
no, nobody ever talks to me about the podcast.
So
But
complain to him.
unless you're John,
Complain to me because I'm probably going to be the first one that sees it.
yeah, more than likely. So, we will be back at it again next week. Talk to you later.
Indeed.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Audibly.
Yeah.